We've talked about one of the most powerful levels for mutants out there, Omega Level. But what happens when these superpowered characters go beyond that? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host Amanda McKnight, and today we'll be counting down the top 10 Beyond Omega Level Mutants. Let's get into it. Number 10, Moira X. We don't really know that much about Moira X in her mutant role yet, and she did just become human, sadly, in the comics. However, what we do know is that her resurrection powers that she had seem to be unparalleled because they imply that she has complete sort of multiversal control built into them. Or at least universal control. That is to say, it is heavily implied in Inferno that if Moira were to die in one of her lives, the universe she was a part of would possibly cease to exist. This prompts Mystique to defeat her by turning her human, then intending to kill her thereafter, now that she is no longer a threat. But of course, Mystique is unable to follow through due to the interference of other mutants on Krakoa, namely Cypher and the sentient mutant island of Krakoa itself. We haven't classified Moira X's power level yet as a mutant, but if she returns to being a mutant, and I kinda really hope she does because I really liked everything that we did with her as a mutant, I wouldn't be surprised if she was considered to be Beyond Omega Level just because of how intrinsically connected her powers are to the fabric of reality itself. It's quite unique and it's also quite powerful. Also, that's kind of why I want to see a return. I just feel like it was such a cool idea. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists where we talk about some super amazing powerful mutants, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I don't know if we have 10 more Beyond Omegas, but maybe we could. Alternate realities. Number 9, Professor X. Professor X is typically classified as an alpha level mutant, so I'm sure you're wondering what made me so boldly include him here. So bold! 2 levels above where his Marvel fandom page has him classified as. I have some things that I disagree with though with that Marvel fandom page, to be honest. And honestly, I put him on this list because of some recent developments that I think were really cool and blew my mind. You can let me know if your mind was also blown by these or not. During the 2021 Inferno story, we saw Xavier and Magneto go up against Omega Sentinel and Nimrod after they were caught in a trap laid for them both by Mystique and Destiny. The two traditionally villainous ladies ended up kidnapping Moira, and while attempting to track her, believing her to have been taken by Orchis, instead, Magneto and Charles ended up fighting against that organization, or more specifically, their Sentinel creations. They ended up fighting more against those because Orchis was quickly, all the humans were gone. During this fight, Charles defeated, or at least very nearly defeated, Nimrod at one point by using his telepathy to, in essence, break them apart. And while this is crazy, what's even cooler is it was hinted that Xavier was capable of this level of psionic assault in the past, when the X-Men actually first fought against the Sentinels back in the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby days, when he concentrated intensely and he actually managed to use his power to temporarily kinda like put the Sentinels to sleep. To me, this was an amazing feat, and it was kind of a cool callback to that original fight against the Sentinels, and one that made me consider Xavier's potential for being an Omega level or even beyond Omega level mutant. I know there's gonna be some people that are gonna be like, hey, no, that was telekinesis, Amanda, and that's what's going on. But I don't think that Xavier actually has telekinesis. I know people say, no, Cassandra Nova, that genetic connection. I'm sorry, but I can't accept it. But if you accept it, that's fine. I just can't. So that's why I'm referring to it as telepathy, just so you know. I acknowledge that it is apparently a thing. Number 8, New Sun. New Sun is an alternate version of Gambit who actually first appeared in one of the Gambit series and is initially a more mysterious figure. He is what Gambit would have been like had he been created purely to be studied and utilized by the government. New Sun ended up escaping the Alpha 1 facility where he was raised and held though. This version of Gambit hails from the alternate reality of Earth 9921. Unlike Gambit, he does not have restrictions or mental blocks when it comes to his capabilities. He can also turn himself into energy and charge objects with kinetic energy without even needing to touch them. New Sun basically shows the potential that Gambit has for his power. However, in the 616 reality, there is an element of fear that Gambit harbors when it comes to his own powers and abilities that New Sun doesn't seem to possess. Which is what makes him so dangerous, but also what puts him way ahead of Gambit's mutant power levels. I wouldn't be surprised if New Sun was classified to hear that he had the potential to be Beyond Omega. I've also just been a really big fan of the fact that like Gambit could be crazy powerful, he just like kinda chooses not to. I think that's cool. Number 7. Matthew Malloy. Matthew Malloy was said to be basically one of the strongest mutants in the entire world, in the entire multiverse even, or at least in his entire world, in his entire universe. Matthew Malloy hails from the reality of 14923, where his power was so great that he caused massive natural disasters by accident, just from feeling intense emotions. He had to be really careful with his powers in order to attempt to avoid such things from happening, but he wasn't very good at being very careful. Matthew Malloy's power set was reality warping based, but his power was so great that he ended up as more of a danger than an asset to the world and to other mutants. As a result, he was defeated by Tempest with some help from Professor Xavier. She defeated Matthew by going back in time to make sure his parents basically never met each other, so he could never be born. With him no longer existing, reality was changed and the one he had lived in blipped out of existence. Bye. Number 6. Marquis of Death. The Marquis of Death is a mutant who is well known for his ability to destroy. He could travel to alternate universes, traversing the multiverse, and was capable of destroying whole worlds within seconds, just with a thought. The Marquis of Death was not from the main continuity of Earth 616, but the alternate Earth of 807128, although there are other alternate versions of him in other universes besides. He's not the only one. This version of Clyde Wincham Jr. became obsessed with death after coming under attack by multiple villains and killing them in an instant with a single thought. He would end up being seemingly killed himself by Dr. Doom in the end, who worked with the Marquis under the guise of being his apprentice. That's the only reason why I ranked him so low. I know Doom is awesome, but I was just like, wow, defeated by Doom. That's how it goes sometimes, I guess. Number 5. Franklin Rishards. Or at the very least, an alternate Franklin Rishards. Franklin Rishards of Earth 616 was recently stripped of his mutant status. No more mutant for him. And while I'm not convinced this will end up staying a permanent change to his character, I don't think it's been undone yet, as far as I know. I'm not up to date on my Fantastic Four though, so if I'm wrong, let me know, because I want Franklin to become a mutant again anyways. It turns out that Franklin had been using his power to alter his genetics to appear as a mutant. This was not intentional, but apparently was subconsciously done, and when his power started to go all wonky, eventually his unintentional genetic manipulation came to an end, which ended up with him being rejected from Krakoa, no longer able to visit there, because they basically found out you were never really a mutant, so bye. A future Franklin Rishards of Earth 10774, however, seemed to have remained a mutant, either permanently one in this alt future, or simply not exposing that he had unintentionally faked his mutant genes. Not really sure which. It was the Mad Celestials in this future that identified him as Beyond Omega Level. Number 4. Miranda. While we never really got to know Miranda's codename or even really her full name, she was given her very own mutant class. That is how great her power was. Beast had to create a whole new classification just for her. She only appears in the Worst X-Men Ever limited series, which by the way is a really great read that I'd recommend you check out if you haven't already done so. Miranda here is shown to have reality warping powers, but ones that don't adversely affect space, time, the multiverse, anything in her reality, or the fabric of the continuum. Beast decided to give the new classification, which would sit above Omega, the name of Omicron, just because he thought it was the most ominous sounding letter of the Greek alphabet, which I gotta say, I love Hank's reasoning for that. So great. Classic Hank. I think my favorite thing is that although in this universe Miranda was beyond Omega Level and could have fixed the world in like a snap, just with a thought, just with a pop. That's how her powers work. She does a thing and it's like pop. She understood why the balance of everything kinda had to be maintained, and was very chill and content to just basically hang out instead of use her powers to fix or ruin the world, as so many reality warpers are prone to try and do, intentionally or unintentionally. And this is also a person that literally wouldn't ruin it, or like nothing bad would happen if she did it, which is pretty cool. Number 3. X-Man. X-Man is the genetic offspring of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, but hails from the alternate reality of Age of Apocalypse, Earth 295. Nathaniel Grey, being the product of Mr. Sinister, using the genes of Jean and Scott, is pretty much the epitome of what their perfect, all-powerful son could be like. Nate himself also seems to have a psionic connection to his alternate reality self, and kind of alternate reality brother Cable as well. At least I like to think of them as like alternate reality brothers. Nathaniel Grey is considered beyond Omega because of just the sheer level of power that he possesses. Like most others on this list we considered to be beyond Omega, he also holds the power to warp reality, but he can also do a lot more than that. Although I think if you can warp reality, That's pretty much just like saying you can really do like anything at all. Kind of like having all the superpowers in one superpower. So I won't even go into everything he can do, because basically if you're like, can he do that? Yes, he can do that. He can do everything. Number 2, Mad Jim Jaspers. Mad Jim Jaspers is a mutant that we don't talk about very often on our mutant lists. He's often a character that falls by the wayside because I suppose he's kinda niche. He hasn't been in like a ton of comics, but when it comes to what he's capable of, he definitely deserves our respect and deserves a spot on this list, I think. Of course, Mad Jim Jaspers is another reality warping mutant. So many Omega and Beyond Omegas tend to be reality warpers, to be honest, which is interesting considering as an Omega even, you're supposed to be the top of the class in whatever your specific powers are. Of course, there are a lot of approaches and methods when it comes to how mutants can reality warp, which is, I suppose, what makes all those Omega and Beyond reality warpers out there distinct and different. That's how we can have so many of them. While Mad Jim Jaspers hasn't been confirmed as Beyond Omega level just based on what we know of him to be capable of, it seems super likely that he would be at that tier, were he to be categorized, were he to be given a classification and a level. An alternate Mad Jim Jaspers, who is believed to actually have been weaker than the main continuity version of this character, threatened the entire multiverse at one point with his power, so that just gives you an idea of what Mad Jim Jaspers could be capable of. Also, he should probably be in some more comics, I feel like. He's always a fun character too when he shows up in my mind. Number 1, Vulcan. Vulcan is Gabriel Summers, the youngest Summers brother who has had a really messed up childhood, slash kind of no childhood, complicated, and who happens to be the most powerful of all the Summers family kids. Scott has his optic blasts and Alex has his energy conversion, but Gabriel has what is possibly a limitless amount of energy manipulation and absorption. He can take in tons of raw energy and just hold it or channel it into something else, which is pretty crazy. Vulcan has been classified many times as Beyond Omega level in the comics by various people, including Rachel Summers, and I think his niece herself would know a thing or two about power classifications that are off the charts, considering she is also an insanely powerful mutant in her own right. And she was also on my long list for even making it on this list, because I think she's Beyond Omega too. Which mutants do you think have the potential to go Beyond Omega level? Who are some of your favorite Beyond Omega or Omega tier mutants that are out there? Would you like to see mutants that are this powerful in the MCU, or do you hope their powers get toned down a bit for that big screen? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, my friends, stay nerdy.